Well, good evening, friends, and welcome to the Cold War Preppers Monday Night Book Club. And let me get this tabbed out. I was listening to the EAM on SDR. That's our computer software defined radio, but just monitoring 11175, which is the EAM frequency, emergency action messages. I bought an HF radio thinking that I could listen to it separately. But this radio, band 4 goes to 10.0 and band 11 starts at 11.45. So it completely skips 10 to 1145, which means that I can't listen to 11.175. Gosh, whatever. I guess there won't be any EAMs after everything happens anyway. So, that's just the way it is. My eyes are giving me problems with the allergies, and hopefully my antibiotics will arrive in the mail. I got to go check that here shortly. These glasses aren't helping at all. I might have to go get my prescription distance glasses here in just a meeting. I saw a whole bunch. Gil actually ended quite a while ago. He wasn't feeling well. He ended his about a quarter till. So let me see who else here. I got new batteries in my mouse, so hopefully everything will work out fine, and it won't take me places I don't want to go. Those aren't doing me any good either. Okay, so Gil ended about a quarter till. Welcome Butch Graves, welcome Kaylin, welcome Little Lone Prepper. Saw you there, Triple G, Pete. Good evening, good to see you, my friend. Butch Graves. Creative Redundancy. I just saw her over on Gil's channel as well. Make a note here. Got to make you a moderator here. You do such a good job over there. Creative Redundancy. Okay, and then we've got I think I saw Theoxerus. I'm not sure. Teresa Buchanan. Hello, welcome. Utah Mike, good to see you, my friend. Holly Ivans. Let me see. Is there anybody else? Oh, I'm sorry. Creative Redundancy says he's a guy, not a gal. Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. Yeah, please let it slide. Don't hold it against me. So anyhow, gosh, the news is kind of, we've got another red line crossed. Evidently, the West has authorized Ukraine to use their long range SSMs to attack anywhere they want to within the range of those weapons, which means that they can basically reach Moscow. So that's not a good thing. Now, what's really funny is I watched a video that was talking about the authorization of those HIMARS to be used to strike anything inside of Russia, and they had a picture on the front. They were trying to get the message across, but it was a BM-21 Grad that they had a picture of. It's a 40-barrel, 122 millimeter MLRS, multiple launch rocket system. They call theirs MRL, multiple rocket launcher, and we call ours MLRS, multiple launch rocket system. But the MRL, they had MRLs long before we had MLRS. As a matter of fact, the Katyusha was originally called Stalin's Organ, and that was the BM-1, Boyovaya Machina Pierwsza, the first Boyovaya Machina. But anyhow, they call it Stalin's organs, and that's what the Germans were just scared to death of it. But that was and it was a cheap weapon that really took up a whole bunch of area. A typical Soviet division, Russian division, has a battalion of multiple rocket launchers, 6 launchers to a battery, 3 batteries to a battalion, 1 battalion to a division. So they've got 18 times 40 rockets can kind of fall down on top of you all at one time. They can pretty much put those inside 1 grid square, which is 1 kilometer square. So that's a lot of explosive and metal coming down in one place. Anyhow, Господин President Putin, has said that if there are any of those systems that come inside of Russia or anywhere close to a populated area, that he will take that as a direct act of war by the West against Russia. So I would say, if you haven't started your prepping, now is the time to consider prepping in all earnesty. This evening, we're going to be talking about a very important part of this. No, that's my show and tell. Where's my book that we're talking about tonight? Is it buried underneath all the other? There it is. I thought it might be buried underneath all the other books. We're doing chapter 4, the Prepper's Workbook, and that's going to be mostly talking about first aid. So it is basic first aid and emergency response. So he's got about 20 pages devoted to this. It's really good information. He has a lot of great checklists. The basic rules of first aid. First, you got to assess the situation, find out things. So the way we do that in CERT is we will try to assess everybody, and then we have a color-coded system and a numerical system 1 through 5. And so, you can prioritize who's going to go in and get care first. And so you want to categorize everybody before you start sending people off. One of the things that they did in our final exam, it was a bus casualty event, and the driver needed a tourniquet, but it had 22 kids inside the bus. And so even though the driver needed a tourniquet, you had to bypass the driver and go take care of the 22 kids and assess them. Because once you put a tourniquet on somebody, according to most places, then you've got to stay with that patient. So there could be 22 that were in stage 2, which would survive if you got the medical care, that would die because you stopped with one to put a tourniquet on them. So do your assessment first and then do your treatments. And then I saw creative redundancy has got the ABCs, and that's correct. So that stands for airway, blood, and then control shock. And so they want you to clear the airway, make sure that they can breathe. Then secondly, stop any major, especially arterial bleeding. We'll get into a little bit of that here in a minute. And then the third one is for controlling shock. Don't panic. And then when rendering medical aid, there are 3 times that you utilize personal protection equipment. Always, always, always. And so, those 3 times, anytime you're in contact with blood, anytime you're doing contact with any kind of liquid that emerges from the body. And then, of course, you don't want to have face-to-face contact. You also don't want to have any splatter in your eyes. That's any splatter in your eyes, almost a direct infusion into your brain and into your blood system. So you want to make sure you have protective eye cover on at all times. A protective mask, if possible, and then protective gloves. So those are the 3 things you really want to have: nitrile gloves, mask, and face guard. He talks about creating a family-specific first aid kit. I will tell you, I had an occasion this weekend or this week. I still haven't received it, but they've determined after 6 months waiting on doctors, 3 months to see the pulmonologist, and then 3 months to see the ENT. The ENT has determined that it is a series of polyps in my nose and postnasal drip and all this severe sinus infection. So that's what's causing my wicked cough and sneeze, my earache, and everything else. So he ordered 2 drugs. He said, "How are you with prednisone?" I said, "That's fine. I can handle it. It doesn't do anything except give me weird dreams. And then I can tell people I'm a prophet or something. I don't know." But, and then the second one was for the antibiotics. Now the antibiotics, he ordered for me doxycycline because I'm allergic to amoxicillin. So I don't know how this happened, but he sent the prednisone to the drugstore right across the street from the hospital where he works. And then for the amoxicillin, he sent it off to my mail order company. So I still haven't received it. However, what I can do, it's right here. Inside here are some more amoxicillin. So I can take the amoxicillin out of here, use it until my other amoxicillin arrives, and that way I can be medicated on time. It also refreshes this because the amoxicillin in here is almost a year old. So that way I'm rotating my medications, if you will. So that's a pretty good deal. I'm very happy that I have that so that I can do that, because it helps against his error. How you say that? Error, I guess. Yeah. He talks about a quick guide to pain relievers. He talks about the differences among aspirin, ibuprofen, and acetaminophen, the advantages of each, the disadvantages of each, and when to use those. And a great discussion that I think it's worth buying the book just for page 82. Okay. Hello, Scott. Welcome. Holly Ivans, welcome. I saw my name, so I kind of just caught up and looked there, and there's Holly Ivans and Scott. Great to see you guys. Then he goes in. He has a whole bunch of area here where you can put in your family medical history. I don't think there's enough pages in this book for my medical history, but let alone Helen's. But anyhow, some sort of medical history. Just in case the system is working, let me grab my wallet. And usually the best place to do this is behind your driver's license, okay? So I've got my driver's license, and then immediately behind my driver's license there are two things. Number one, there's the prepaid plan that I have to bury me. So if they arrive upon me and I'm gone, just ship me off to this particular funeral home because it's already paid. And if I'm still alive, then I have an emergency medical card. And so this emergency medical card has my name, date of birth. Let me see. Glasses again. Reading glasses. So it has my name, all of my diagnosed diseases, et cetera, my allergies, in case of emergency contact, and it gives my wife's phone number, it gives her name and relationship, and then it says call a priest. So, all that is on this card. Of course, the same thing in case they don't check behind my wallet, because I'm having a hard time getting this in there, and that's because I put I have my hunting and fishing license behind there too. So, if you're a Texan, by the way, and have served and are honorably discharged, you get your or on active duty, you can get your combination hunting fishing license for free. It's one of the things Texas really does well for its citizens. Hello, Shenanigans, welcome. But anyhow, so he goes into that, all your allergies and everything else, all your medical care, things that are going to probably have an effect on if somebody were to casually inspect you, what would the difference be? And then I have another one here. So, of course, I have my crucifix, and then this is my Med Alert charm. And so he gives the same thing and lets them know that there's a card in my wallet to check. So, I wear that around my neck. So, because of my allergies to certain drugs, there's azithromycin, which is a very common antibiotic, and then formoterol and formaldehyde, which are used as preservatives in a lot of the medications, that causes some problems. So it's nice to have them aware of that. Okay, identify the ABCs. We've already did that. Who was that? Little Lone Prepper, I think, that said identify ABCs. I know one of you came up very early and said the ABCs were important. I forget who it was, but it was very wise. That's exactly correct. I'm looking to give you the proper credit. I forget who it was. 72-year-old mind. So, I'm allowed to forget things every once in a while, but I hate forgetting people because people are so very important. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm not. There it is. Creative redundancy was talking about the ABCs. There we go. Learn how to perform wound care and bleeding control. Let me tell you, if you ever see a class offered called Stop the Bleed, absolute best class I have ever attended in my entire life. I really like it. They had a dummy, and then they had like 4 or 5 major wounds on the dummy, and they could squirt colored water basically through the blood system and direct it towards the wound that they wanted to. And then you got to reach inside. And the dummy was designed in such a way that the pumping of the blood simulated what an artery would feel like. So you can identify an artery in 5 major locations on the body just by feel. Then you, of course, want to use pressure to stop that. And you also learn in Stop the Bleed the various ways to stop the bleeding, of course, getting it above the heart, direct pressure, and then you're going to have a pressure point, and then, of course, a tourniquet. So all these different ways of stopping bleeding. One of the ways you learn in Stop the Bleed is how to pack a wound. So if you have an arterial wound, which is what that dummy is, then you can have rolled gauze and in this case, it was fan fold gauze. And we just kept on packing gauze in there until there was so much gauze in there that it basically pushed down so hard on the artery that it stopped the bleeding. And so that's one of the things you want to consider is learning how to control arterial blood flow before using a tourniquet. So remember that in a post-apocalyptic world, the only person who can remove a tourniquet is a physician. So you're going to, if you put a tourniquet on, remember the repercussions of that. So the limb will go moribund. That's an active state of decay. It will develop gangrene if you don't take the tourniquet off. That's going to be infectious. And then once you do take the tourniquet off, then that's going to cause major infection in the body. You're definitely going to need to have plenty of antibiotics. But there are repercussions if you put a tourniquet on to save a life in a post-apocalyptic world where there's no medical care to properly take the tourniquet off. Then all you've done is prolong the agony of that person and the suffering until they eventually pass away anyway. But that's the bad news. Okay. Okay, so it makes a very good point. I got this one highlighted. It says, tip, the application of direct, I told you these tips are throughout the book, just phenomenal. The application of direct pressure to a wound is something the patient can usually do themselves. So if you've got a venal bleed and all you're going to do is put a compress on it and they need to hold pressure on it, then you say, I'm going to put a compress on here. You're going to put pressure on it, hold it like this until I get back. They can do that, okay? They can put the direct pressure on themselves while you take care of others, especially in a mass casualty event. So allow them to do self-treatment. Talks about applying a tourniquet. Just a pet peeve of mine, there's cat and rat. And a lot of times people say the last T twice. So CAT is a combat application tourniquet, and RAT is a rapid application tourniquet. So if you say CAT tourniquet, you're saying combat application tourniquet. But anyhow, Little Known Prepper says, can an arterial bleed heal without surgery? Yes, it can. And what happens is that it ends up self-sealing if you keep the pressure on it long enough. What happens, however, is because of the loss of blood flow to the rest of that limb, and we're talking, remember that a tourniquet is only applied to a limb. It's not applied to the torso or to the head, only to a limb. So your 2 arms and your 2 legs. If you do apply a tourniquet and you don't take it off without surgery, then basically what happens is it causes atrophy of that limb and gangrene and just terrible things. But the wound itself will self-heal. It will, basically shut down and cut off the flow of blood. Now, you can also, in an SHTF situation, you can help it along by cauterizing it. And you see that done in a lot of Western movies where there's a really bad bleed, and they take a knife, they stick it in the fire, get it red hot, and then just go in and basically solder that artery shut. You're burning the tip of it shut so that the blood doesn't flow out, and then it'll redirect itself. So yes, you can stop the bleeding without surgery, but there are severe repercussions of that. Okay. Hello, Laura. Welcome. Good evening. Good to see you. Let me see here if there's anything else. Great question. Oh, thank you for asking. My chihuahuas were there's a cat, a stray cat, and it sets off my perimeter alarms all night long. And the chihuahuas know it's a cat. And so I don't know. I guess they hear the whining or whatever else from outside. Boy, they kept me up all night. I did not get that much sleep tonight. And then I've had 2 Zoom meetings and 2 lives. And it's just, gosh, it's been a busy day. There are also the soft T and SWAT T types of tourniquets. Yes, there are. And I have both of those as well. And yeah, they're okay. I prefer the cat or the rat, but I have both. I have all kinds of tourniquets. I probably have a half dozen tourniquets. I'll get into a list of things I think you should have here in just a minute. And then learn how to recognize and treat shock. And that takes up 1.5 pages in his book, and that's a very important thing. Because once you go into shock, that can cause hypothermia. There are lots of things that it can cause. The body basically starts shutting down, and you want to make sure that that they've got a good airflow, they've got good blood flow, that they stay hydrated, that they stay warm. There's a lot of things you can do to control shock. So he's got about 1.5 pages of suggestions, all of them very, very good. Then he goes a little bit further. I've never seen anybody else discuss this, but this is going to be extremely important. And that is, how do you recognize and treat a concussion? So traumatic brain injury is going to be extremely critical. Remember, if we have a boom boom go off with a mushroom cloud, that there's a couple things. Okay, number one, if you don't get thrown, okay, and all kinds of contusions, bruises, blunt force trauma to the body, like taking a baseball bat and hitting you or something like that. So if you aren't thrown against a wall, or you aren't thrown against a car or something like that and cause blunt force trauma to your body that way, then objects are going to be thrown into you. So remember, there are 3 distinct parts of a boom boom that you have to worry about. Number one is going to be the initial radiation, which is basically an intense light. Okay, so the intense light, if you're close enough, basically chars you away and incinerates you to nothingness. And all that's left is a shadow of where your body had been standing before. I mean, this light is intense. It just incinerates people within a certain radius of where it is. Go to Nuclear Secrecy, Alex Wellerstein's channel. And he's got, basically, you can plug in, if a nuke fell here, what is the circle as far as that thermal radiation, how that's going to just incinerate everything. So that's number one. You're going to, and then as you get further away, you're still going to have burns. So you have to be able to treat burns. There's going to be a shock wave as a second part. And so that's going to either throw you or throw objects at you. And that's going to be the blunt force trauma for your body, either going against an object or an object going against you. The third one is some of those objects are going to be sharp. Let me go back to the second one. So that blunt force trauma can also mean broken bones, plenty of broken bones. That's going to become important when we talk about the first aid kit. So the third one, of course, is going to be, it can throw sharp objects at you. Those sharp objects can be just like a bullet, or just like an arrow, or a hatchet, or anything like that, as far as causing any kind of a incursion into your body. And that can even be abrasions, okay? So we have to learn how to control bleeding and control cuts and wounds of that nature. So the next one he talks about is the burn, of course, and how to identify first, second, and third degree burns, how to treat each one of the 3. Fantastic discussion, really good at it. Then he also talks about how to treat and how to identify and treat both of the extremes, and that is heat injuries as well as cold injuries. And so we have to take consideration of that in the appropriate season. And then we also in here talk a little bit about trench foot, which is what happens if you get your feet wet and don't change your boots or socks, don't dry them out. What happens to your feet? That can basically become so bad that they have to amputate your feet. but there won't be a surgeon around to do that. Okay, so then it takes up about 3 pages on cold and heat injuries. He recommends that everybody become certified in CPR. I strongly recommend that as well. I'm not saying you have to maintain a current CPR card. I had to when I worked at the homeless shelter. We had to do it every year. We had to learn how to do arterial AED. I forget what it is, but the D is defibrillation. But that's the paddles and helping a person who's gone into cardiac arrest. Kaylin probably knows. Kaylin, what is AED? Help me. So if the oxygenized says that sealed blood vessels will recanalize alternate pathways eventually, yes. Yeah, I'm going to talk about Israeli bandages. That's one of the things I strongly recommend you have in your kit. But it is a pressure or a high pressure bandage. It is not a tourniquet. So it will cause the direct, remember we said, you can elevate the wound or you can put direct pressure on it. An Israeli bandage is the best form of direct pressure on a wound that there is, but it is not a tourniquet. It won't stop blood flow. It only stops exterior flow, okay, bleeding in that sense. Amen, Phioxerus. Amen. I don't think he will either. I think he might. You never can tell. I am more afraid of North Korea, and I'm more afraid of Iran than I am of Russia or China. Because both those people, both North Korea and Iran, just hate us. They want to do away with us, and so that would not surprise me for them to do ground bursts. Russia, China want our assets, and so they won't contaminate the ground. I think they would be sensible and do air bursts where they get maximum kill with minimum long-term radiation effects. So I'm more afraid of North Korea and Iran. It depends on where the explosion is, Kaylin. Anything that is in contact with the fireball becomes irradiated. Okay, so if it's up in the air, like we did Hiroshima and Nagasaki, there was some direct alpha, beta, gamma from the explosion itself, but there was no long-term radioactive fallout. Okay, if we do a surface burst, and that is where the actual explosion comes in contact with the earth, then that all of that soil that is in contact with the fireball becomes irradiated. That then superheated ascends in the air, just like a hot air balloon. Then the winds aloft carry it, so you have to know the direction of the winds aloft, are going to carry it as basically a hot air balloon until that object cools down and it no longer has that buoyancy to stay in the air. That's when it falls down to the earth. That's why it's called fall out. It falls out of the wind pattern. So that is radioactive because it was actually inside the sphere of the explosion. And I think Iran, I think North Korea could do that. I don't think China and Russia would do that. I think they both use air bursts. Now, another thing to consider is, and even with an EMP, we have got to get our nuclear reactors shut down because if they aren't properly shut down, probably after about 72 hours of not having electricity, then they're probably going to start superheating, and we'll have a whole bunch of Chernobyls here in the United States. I think we have 173 nuclear power plants here in the U.S. And that, I think I am more afraid of that than I am of the actual nuclear explosions coming over. I don't know what this is, but I trust that Pete thinks it's important. Okay. Thank you. Automated external defibrillator. Thank you. Suzanne, welcome. Goulet, I believe, would be how you would pronounce that last name. Kind of French. But welcome. The Heimlich maneuver is the most underrated. Let me get that up here. Life-saving first aid tech, I believe. Everyone, Heimlich maneuver is fantastic. Just you can't use it on a toddler or an infant. You have to use a different process for that. There is a company that has come out basically with a suction device that is not too high of a pressure. It's just high enough of a pressure where it can suck an object out. But you can do damage if you use something that has too much suction on an infant or a toddler. Then that can cause permanent damage as well. So, but you can't really do that much. You can't do that much pressure on an infant or a toddler as far as the Heimlich maneuver. You can do a modified, but you just don't use the same amount of force. That can cause permanent damage for a toddler or a child, an infant. Okay. Let me see here. Gosh, my allergies, my eyes are just bothering the living daylights out of me. I meant to set a alarm clock so that I don't keep you guys over tonight. Recognize and treat a seizure. So I don't think he gets into it here. So the four oh gosh. It's called FAST, and it's the four. What do you call it when it shows that it's a disease or something is present? Identification, no. Symptoms. There we go. The 4 symptoms of a stroke. FAST. So first is facial drooping, any kind of facial drooping. A is, I forget. Help me, somebody who's certified in it. A is, S is slurred speech. And then T, I forget. I have to look that up. Somebody look up FAST for a stroke symptom. Let me see here. I'll do it. FAST stroke symptom acronym. There we go. Oh, come on. Don't do that to me. Okay, so facial, I don't want to see any advertisements. A is arm weakness. I'm sorry. S is slurred speech. And then T is time to call 911. So facial drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty, and then call 911. Fast. Okay, there we go. Okay. That's interesting. And here's another thing that you need to be really, really aware of. You're going to, so you start at the base of the sternum. You can feel where that is. 3 fingers up for an adult. And that's where you put your hand to do the pressure. You want to depress the sternum. That's the bone. You want to depress that bone 1 to 1.5 inches. So if there's a lot of fat tissue or it's a extremely well-endowed woman, you're going to have a lot of fat tissue that you're going to have to get through in order to compress the sternum. Until you get that perfect, there is the possibility that you're going to break ribs is high. You are probably going to hear a couple cracks. You're going to crack ribs. You're going to break ribs if you're doing CPR right. You want to make sure, and the whole thing is to make sure you're getting blood flow through the body. If you aren't compressing the heart, and the heart is lower than the sternum, so when they're laying on their back, you got to get that sternum down. So you're pushing on the sternum so that the sternum pushes on the heart. And you want to get that heart moving so that it's pumping the blood. And in order to do that, sometimes in a lot of people, you just break ribs. That's all there is to it. Be aware of that ahead of time. I would much rather come out of it with 3 broken ribs and have pain for a week than not come out of it at all. So whoever said that, Theoxerus is absolutely correct. Doing anything is better than doing nothing, unless you're going to do something that's going to cause more damage. Then I would say probably don't do that. So Scott says that he recommends, yes, CPR, stop the bleed, and CERT. Well, CERT is, there's some first aid taught in CERT. I wouldn't call CERT first aid, although there's probably a 3 or 4 hour module of first aid inside CERT. Triage is an important part of CERT that I think is extremely critical. But if you have a CERT organization where you are, it's funded by FEMA, fantastic training, absolutely fantastic training. I highly recommend it. And then, of course, get advanced first aid training if you can. That's that one, advanced first aid from Red Cross. That used to be the highest you could get. That's what we had to have in order to drive an ambulance, be an ambulance attendant, before they came out with EMTs. Okay, so how to identify and treat an allergic reaction. And if you can get an EpiPen, EpiPens are expensive. I think on the open market, they're about $185 each if you have a prescription. I have 2 because of my allergies to certain things, and I use them. I also have to take them with me when I get my allergy shots because, of course, they're injecting something that I'm allergic to inside my body and trying to build up an immunity to it. Sometimes if they just inject too much, then you have to have an EpiPen handy. Now, one of the things that you can do in your first aid kit to prepare for an allergic reaction is make sure you have plenty of Benadryl. Benadryl is a fantastic drug that you can use to counter any kind of an allergic reaction. Also, until we get into the next part, he has 10 essential survival skills. Learn how to locate and purify water. We've discussed that an awful lot. Build a temporary shelter in case yours is destroyed or you're bugging out. Learn to build a fire in adverse conditions. This is the reason, and I told you last week that Amazon had the Zippo lighter on sale. The main reason I am all for the Zippo lighter, with a Bic lighter, you've got that little aluminum piece on the top, and if you hold that down and you keep the flame going too long, that gets hot. You're going to burn yourself just using the Zippo lighter because it gets so hot. With a Zippo, it's got that same top, but your hand is away from it basically. Once you get that ignited with the ferrite rod and the rolling steel, what would you call it? Rasp, grating against the ferrite rod, ferrocerium rod, that throws a spark into the flame. Once that's done, your hand is away from that area where the heat is. You're down on the base of the flashlight. It's also windproof. It's also pretty much waterproof compared to the Bic. So I just think that the Zippo lighter is a heck of a lot better tool to have in a post-apocalyptic world. That's going to help you to ignite things that are wet, damp, or whatever a lot easier than having a Zippo lighter. If it's wet, damp, you're not going to use a ferrocerium rod and I've got mine here because I'm getting ready to do my knife video. So, if you got a ferrocerium rod and you're using it with your 90-degree angle on the back of your knife, I would show you, but we're not allowed to show anything like this on a live. They can't have the blade exposed, can't have a firearm on a live, because I guess they're afraid that you might do something with them. So you have to keep them sheathed, or else I'd show you. But there are other things you can use, of course, for that ferrocerium rod. Well, they were going to show them, they were going to have me train myself on how to use an EpiPen. But in the Army, we have a anti-nerve agent. I forget the name of it now. But when you're in an area that you believe that the enemy has used nerve agents against you, and once you get your mask on and everything else, if you think you've been exposed, then you can inject it. It's an auto injector, and you inject it into your thigh. So when they saw that I was retired military, said, "Oh, you've already done an auto injector." And I said, "Yep, sure have." And they said, "Atropine." There we go. Thank you, Scott. The atropine injector. So there are 2 of those in your gas mask in the combat zone. And so you can inject one, and if that doesn't work, you inject a second one. So once they found out that I had already done myself with the atropine, I didn't have to do it for the EpiPen. Exact same thing between the atropine and EpiPen. Exact same mechanism. I mean, they even look alike. You might confuse the two of them. I haven't heard that creative redundancy. The reason they probably say that is in case you have put the wrong end where you're stabbing yourself on your leg. If you have a thumb or something on top and you have the wrong end, then that needle's going to go through your hand or through your thumb. That's probably a safety precaution. I've never heard it, but we were taught to grab it in our hand. And this is probably about the size of it anyway. You're going to grab it in your hand and then take it down and stab yourself. So once that cap makes contact with your body, then the spring-loaded needle comes out. And once the spring-loaded needle comes out, there's another action up here that injects the medication through the needle into your body. So pretty neat little mechanism, actually. I really like it. Oh, okay. So Teresa kind of agrees with me. Thank you, Teresa. But you said it before I did, so I'll give you credit for that. I'll say I read your post. How's that? Let me catch up with. Okay. Number 4, learn to navigate on land and water. Make sure you learn how to use a compass and a map. If you can get topographical maps of the areas you're going to be into, that would be fantastic. You can kind of guess where water might be, where food might be, things like that, if you have a topographical map. Learn first aid and natural remedies. Learn unarmed and armed close quarters fighting skills. So for me, I learned American cane fighting because I have to walk with a cane anyway, so why not learn how to use it as a weapon? I wish I had learned how to be a good knife fighter. But I didn't, and I do know one thing. I do know, and then after I was told to me, it became very obvious. And of course the Romans were experts on it too. You don't use a bladed weapon as a slashing weapon. Now, cutlass you can because it's very heavy. You're going to cut through bone. The katana you can because it's curved in such a way that it slices through the body. But primarily, edged weapons are stabbing weapons. And so as I look back, I think, oh yeah, that's what the Roman gladius it had a point on it, but the sides weren't sharpened. It was not a slashing tool; it was a stabbing tool. The same thing with their pilum and some of their other weapons. Then you go through and you see all the swords. What happened with the swords? They turned into the epee, and the epee is epee, EPEE, which is basically just a long. It's octagonal, but it can be cylindrical piece of steel that's pointed on the tip. So all they did was, and that's what you see modern fencing that we use in the Olympics and other kinds of competition, that epee is not a slashing weapon. It is a stabbing weapon, pure and simple. So they went away over time from the efficiency of a slashing weapon to a stabbing weapon. Also think of that in terms of defending your home. If you're going to slash, you've got to take it overhead. And so if you're in a doorway or something like that, then you lose the momentum if it hits above or to the side or anything like that. Whereas if you're just stabbing and poking straight ahead, that makes it a lot more efficient and effective. Plus, a stab wound is a lot harder to treat than a slash wound. Learn to use firearms for personal and home defense as well as hunting. Learn to identify, gather, and prepare wild plant foods. So there are a couple of fantastic channels on foraging. I strongly recommend you get anything and everything you can to read pictures about edible plants, especially in your neck of the woods. We're transition here in the hill country. So we're transition between, the piney woods and the desert, arid area. So we kind of have things, some of the great things that I learned in Boy Scouts. I grew up in the arid part, in the desert part, high mountain desert in El Paso, and we cooked prickly pear all the time. We have a lot of prickly pear here because we're in that transition zone. So we have prickly pear, but we also have a lot of the flowering plants. So kind of nice here in the hill country. Number 9, learn to hunt, trap, fish, and collect other animal foods. I will tell you, be as efficient as you can. I think that trapping and fishing with nets and or yo-yos, and that's the automatic. I got mine out. I didn't think. It's right over here somewhere. There it is. I have these out for another video, but might as well just show them here. But this is a yo-yo. Okay, so basically what happens is that you got your you pull it out, and once you pull the string out, there we go. Once you pull the string out, if anything tugs on it, then it just automatically, I got my thumb on it so that it doesn't do it real fast, but it automatically reels it in. So it's going to catch that fish and reel it back in. So you can hang this up in a tree. It's got holes here where you can tie it to a tree. You can tie it to something on the bank or whatever. Throw your bobber, throw your weight, throw your hook in the water, and just let it go for itself while you're off doing something else. So this is a way where you're not fishing, but you are fishing. You're letting it go for you. A trot line would be fantastic. That's another labor-saving device. So if you have any jugs or anything like milk jugs, water jugs, whatever, that you can use as floats, and then you're going to tie those across a river or a stream or a body of water. You got the float, it was going to be the jug. You've got a line coming down from it with a weight and a hook on it, and that's going to be it's going to catch your fish for you. And then you just bring in the whole line, and hopefully you have 4 or 5 fish. That's a lot more effective than you sitting there with a rod and reel. You can also build fish traps. A Boy Scout Field Book, the 1942 Boy Scout Field Handbook, has a fantastic system of traps you can do to catch fish. Same thing. I think trapping is going to be far more effective in gathering 4-legged or animal meat than is hunting. Number one, hunting, you're going to make a noise and everybody's going to know you've got, if you didn't make a kill, you should have, but they're going to know where you are too. Trapping is very quiet. You can build great traps, and then you don't have to be there. You can check those traps once every 24 hours and you're good to go. But that's going to be something that's going to give you a lot more efficiency, a lot more effectiveness in your gathering of food and stuff like that. So I would say avoid this kind of hunting as much as possible. Ammunition is going to be scarce after a while. Go for trapping. I'm going to say avoid this kind of fishing and go for nets, trot lines, and yo-yos as much as possible. Okay. And then number 10, learn to maintain and repair your essential gear and equipment. Always buy extra stuff. So as a matter of fact, there was a comment on my prepper pantry haul this last weekend, and I had shown that I got a paint scraper. And somebody want to know why would a prepper have a paint scraper? Well, because that's part of maintaining your home or maintaining your abode, maintaining your shelter is, scraping off some of that bubbled paint and putting on new paint and stuff like that. So we've got 10 minutes left. I would like to show you some of the books that I strongly recommend. Oh, wait a minute. I see a good comment here. Who is that? That's Kaylin. Let me see. Shenanigans says that West Virginia is in a drought. Hardly any rain at all while I was there. Same with Southern California. So we had rain here, not that much. Probably got about a fifth of my water storage tank replenished. Supposed to continue to rain tonight. Oh, we are in severe drought conditions. So Lake Travis, which is right there by Austin, just north of Austin, is down 51 feet. So we are considered severe drought here where we are. So yeah, the whole country. I saw an article somewhere that said that we're in the beginnings of a 100-year drought. So it's going to get worse. Create a redundancy. Yes, that's a good way of putting it. Absolutely. So do the most effective way and don't expend energy to get food energy. How much energy are you acquiring in the food versus how much energy are you having to expend in order to get it? Very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. So Kaylin's dad used to use trout lines with 6 to 10 hooks. Well, I probably would not use it in a lake. A lake is where I would use something like the yo-yo, where you're not going to have any pressure on the yo-yo to cause it to come back up. I would also use a trap in a lake. I would use a gilt net in either case, a stream, river, or lake. Any one of those three. I think that a gilt net would be a fantastic thing to have. Matter of fact, I do have one. I don't get to see that very often. Here in Central Texas, we very seldom have snow. When we get it, it's actually an ice storm. So I don't know which one you're talking about. You're probably talking about snow, but here we get ice storms, and that's one of the problems we have. Interesting. Pralidoxime, 2-priodine aldoxime methyl chloride, or 3-2-PAM, usually as the chloride or iodide salts. It's used to treat organophosphate poisoning in conjunction with atropine and other diazepam. So basically, probably what I think Scott's saying is there sometimes people overdose. So you've got a problem. You overdose with something to treat that problem. Now you have to treat the overdose. I think that's what he's talking about. I hope that's what he's talking about. Otherwise, I just made a fool of myself, didn't I? Okay, so now what I would like to do is I would like to talk to you about some books I strongly recommend. So I really like this one, the First Aid Manual, and this is from the American College of Emergency Physicians. Really great book. Read them before you need them, okay? I also have this one. I bought this one, gosh, $15. When was it? At Grizzlies in San Antonio, Texas. So this had to be in 1972. No, it's a 1982 publication date. Anyhow, this one I've had for quite a while, Emergency War Surgery. So basically it gives you some idea on some of the things you can do in an emergency situation. I'm opposed to that, to be honest with you. I am opposed to suturing or stapling and or surgery by a non-trained person in a non-sterile environment. And the reason I'm opposed to suturing and stapling in a non-sterile environment, I use either Steri-Strips or they have a new thing now called a zip stitch. So it's basically a line, a bandage on one side and a bandage on the other side. It's got these little zip ties that go in between the two, and you pull on the zip ties and it pulls it together. That's called the zip stitch. I like those because I'm not putting any more wounds, puncture wounds, into the body. So if I were to use either sutures or a staple, then every one of those is putting a puncture wound on each side of that original wound. So you're tripling the chances of infection. I don't like that. So I'm going to avoid that. I'm going to avoid any kind of a remedy that I'm going to add any more puncture wounds to the body in order to effectuate that remedy. Where There Is No Dentist is a great book. Where There Is No Doctor, let me see. Yeah, I have it down here. Where There Is No Doctor was another great one. Then Wilderness. This is a separate type of first aid class that is phenomenal. If you get the opportunity to take Wilderness First Aid, take it. That is a phenomenal class. Then, of course, the 3 books by Dr. Alton, Joe Alton, and his wife, Nurse Amy. You've got the Survival Medicine Handbook. This is the 2nd edition. No, I think it's, no, let me see. No, this is the 1st edition, and they're up to their 4th or 5th edition now. But that's a fantastic book that I strongly recommend that you have. You also have their Pandemic Preparedness Guide, and then they also have Antibiotics and Infectious Diseases. If you're going to get either this or this, even though they have great guides inside of both of those, make sure you get this to go along with it, okay? Because you want to make sure you're doing the right thing, the right antibiotic for the right symptoms, okay? So those are some of the things I recommend. Some of the overlooked first aid kit items: get yourself some gauze. You're going to use gauze like you would not believe, especially if you pack a wound. Anytime you can get rolled gauze, or you can get what they call fan fold gauze, get it. Get as many 4x4s as you possibly can. I think that's going to be the mainstay of your first aid kit. Triangular bandages, I buy them by the dozen, okay? Because you're going to use them for splints. You can tie on splints. You can use them for a sling. You can use them for a bandana. You can use them to tie on bandages and dressings. You can use the bandage to try on dressing. Just phenomenal uses for triangular bandages. Get as many of them as you possibly can. Israeli compress bandages come in 4-inch and 6-inch sizes. I recommend that you get both. Now, I was going to dig one out and show it to you, but what it is, it's got a bar, and then that bar is attached to a pressure plate. So if you put it on your arm, when you pull that bar over, basically what you're doing is you're using that bar, and it's going to put pressure. So it's got a little adapter here, so that as you pull on the bar, it's pushing down on the wound and causing more pressure than what you just did by winding the bandage around, okay? And so it's a phenomenal piece of kit. It's a really, really great for appendages. Probably you're going to have a little bit of trouble with it on the torso, but you can try to use it on the torso. That's no problem whatsoever. I would also recommend that you get some chest seals for any kind of a chest injury that's going to cause a sucking chest wound. Make sure you get a chest seal. They are phenomenal. Make sure you have lots of burn dressings, because there's going to be a lot of burns. That's just the fact of the matter. Burns are. I'm afraid of burns, especially. Most people, if we're going to run out of electricity, going to run out of gas, they're going to be cooking outdoors for the first time. They're going to reach for a pot that they don't realize that it wasn't sitting on a burner, that the whole thing was exposed to the fire. There's going to be all kinds of burns, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree. And so I recommend just get as much burn treatment as you can. There are some spray bottles. You can get them at any place, big box store, anywhere else. It's called Wound Wash. It's under pressure. but it's sterile saline water so that you can irrigate a wound before you close it up, get rid of anything that might cause infection that's inside of it. Make sure you get that and have plenty of that available as well. There is something, and I'll put a link for it in the show notes tomorrow. There's something called a SAM splint, okay? And I really, really like it. It's a thin layer of aluminum, and it's got a very thin layer of padding on both sides. And usually it has kind of an orange color to it. But they're about 18, 24 inches long enough to where you can unroll it. It comes in a roll, and then you can put it into an elbow, crimp the corner, and now you've got a stable splint for, let's say, a broken elbow. You get the longer ones for a leg. You can use it for a hand. There's all kinds of uses for the SAM splint. In my opinion, one of the best first aid kit pieces of equipment that has come out in the 20th century. So I have plenty of SAM splints, and then you're going to have an ACE wrap basically to attach that to whatever appendage is broken. So SAM splint, get plenty of those. Israeli bandage, chest wound. Then you're going to want to have as much gauze as you can get, as many triangular bandages as you can get, and you should be pretty well off. But also, don't forget the boo-boo kits. Don't forget that you're going to need Band-Aids and things like that, the smaller, for nicks and bruises and things like that. You're going to need those in your first aid kit too. Let me check the comments, and then we are right at 1 hour and 1 minute. Hello, North Carolina farmer. Welcome. So creative redundancy is talking about back of hand injuries. Yes. Yeah, and that, so people don't realize how sensitive your fingertips and your palm is. So something in that area is going to be more aggravating as far as pain than most other places on the body. I think the eye probably has more receptors, pain receptors, than anything else in the body. And then after that, the face, and along with the face, the hands and the feet, hands, and face. Absolutely correct. Yes, but I still get plenty of them. All sizes, get as many as you can. Okay. Let me see here. Let me grab the Bible, and we'll go to Numbers chapter 6, verse 24, 25, 26. I'm just going to say stay awake, stay aware. Stay aware of things that are going on internationally. Things are not looking good. Prep up, get what you can as you can. I'm kind of disheartened. The whole reason I have this solar system that produces more electricity than what we need when it's working it is to power the battery, and then the battery, of course, powers the refrigerator, so we can keep our insulin cold for as long as possible. And but the company that ADT Solar had the contract first. They installed my last 8 panels. I had a really good company, Sun Solar, but they were bought out by ADT. ADT, I wouldn't do business with them if they were the last company on earth. Then I had my roof replaced, and the roofing guy said, look, you can only do it. But the minute you touch my solar system, you negate the warranty. He says, we will honor the warranty, the life of the warranty. I'll take care of it. And I said, okay, you can have it. So this guy came in, he put everything back on. All of a sudden, the 3rd of October, my entire solar system went down. And so I've been trying to get it fixed. They finally came out Friday. They came out last Friday at 9 a.m. And it was up for a day, and now it's back down again. But they say it's a part that they've ordered that should be arriving hopefully tomorrow. But right now, I'm not getting any solar at all. So if you're depending upon solar, realize that solar goes down just like everything else, and it can be a wicked woman, a witch when it does go down. So take care, shenanigans. Have a good one. Take care, Scott and Holly. So the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you and kindly and grant you peace. So remember that we're all in this together, so we can get out the other side together. Please be kind, polite, and respectful to each other, because togetherness is the key. We won't be, I will not have my nuclear physicist that I thought I was going to have next Monday to talk with us. He does not feel comfortable that he might give away something that he could go to jail for. And so he would rather just be safe and not talk about it at all. So I'll see if I can't find somebody else to talk about nuclear warfare and everything else and get with you and give you a presentation on that. So take care, everybody. Thank you for being here. Have a wonderful week and please stay safe. Bye-bye.